What's going on, Bottom Line viewers? It's Mitch here of The Bottom Line View, back with another NFL Top 5 video. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the top 5 NFL dark horse teams going into the 2017 season. Now, what exactly is a dark horse team? Well, it's not an overrated team. It's not an underrated team. If you haven't checked out those lists, go check them out right now. But they're kind of these teams that can sneak under the radar, but are legitimate threats to go far in the playoffs, or legitimate threats to make an impact this season. They're not exactly underrated. They might have a little bit more hype, and they're not exactly overrated. People, the media, or the fans may not exactly anticipate having a strong season this year in 2017. So these are the 5 NFL dark horse teams, starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is probably the team with the most hype that did not make the playoffs last year going into 2017. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are expected to take the next step. They're expected to take the jump. And why are they expected to take the jump this year? Well, they were 9-7 a year ago. They're led by a very confident, good leader at the quarterback position, very young Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston has all the athletic tools. He has the leadership qualities. Jameis Winston could potentially be, yes, I'm going to say it, an MVP candidate going into the 2017 season. He has all the ability, and not only does he have the ability, but now they have surrounded him with the pieces for him to make it happen. They signed Deshaun Jackson from the Washington Redskins this offseason, one of the best burners in the NFL still at his age. Mike Evans, one of the best receivers in the league, had a breakout humongous year last year and was pretty much unstoppable. So they add Deshaun Jackson to take some pressure off Mike Evans and also give another target on the opposite side of the field for Jameis Winston. They add O.J. Howard in the draft to add with Cameron Brate to form one of the better young tight end tandems in the NFL. O.J. Howard is just a straight up athletic freak of nature from Alabama who could come in day one and at least help in the run game, but also pitch in with some big plays down the field. He's great after the catch, good hands. Cameron Brate, one of the sneaky tight ends from last season. He's a reliable target for Jameis Winston, and he proved his chemistry last year. Yes, Doug Martin is suspended for the first 3 games, but they do have a decent core of running backs right behind him, with Jacquizz Rodgers probably getting the start. Also, they have Charles Sims, who's a good complementary pass-catching running back, so that's a good triple threat. And if Doug Martin can come back past those first 3 games and explode like he did in the 2015 season, this offense is going to be absolutely downright scary. Then you look towards the defense with Lavonte David and Kwan Alexander really being the 2 leaders of that defense in the inside. You also have a strong interior defensive line with Jarrell McCoy. So add up Jarrell McCoy, Lavonte David, Kwan Alexander. The way they played last year was very, very exciting. These 3 players can take over any point in the game. Alexander, another freak on the defensive side of the ball. Lavonte David, good all-around linebacker, added his pass rushing game this past season. J.J. Wilcox, they signed at the strong safety position from the Dallas Cowboys, who had a very strong season under the radar for the Cowboys. That's going to be a good signing for them. They still have Brent Grimes at quarterback. So I look at this defense and I see a lot of potential, especially with some of the upper echelon type playmakers they do have on this defense. And if they can form it and put it together the same way they did last year, along with an offense that's sure to be stronger, with a quarterback that's rising in his game, I don't see why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won't be considered a team that could make the playoffs this year after going 9-7 last year and improving in the offseason and having a young core that is building. So I look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as one of the dark horse teams in 2017. The next dark horse team is a team that's very similar. I would call it the AFC equivalent to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers NFC. It's the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, again, were 9-7 a year ago, very much like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Very close to getting into the playoffs last year. If it weren't for Marcus Mariota's injury, they might have even gotten into the playoffs. But 9-7 a year ago, they were 2-4 within the division, and if they just improve that division record, you're looking at an 11-5, 10-6 record, which is no slouch. That's a pretty good record. The Titans added weapons to support their young quarterback very much the same way that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did. They added weapons in Corey Davis and Eric Decker to an already strong running game with DeMarco Murray and also Henry in there. DeMarco Murray, still one of the best backs in the league. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, run the ball inside, outside. You have Corey Davis, who was drafted as the best receiver in the draft. Eric Decker, who I've always liked, very consistent, good possession receiver and should help out a young quarterback. They still have Delaney Walker there, who's still one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And they have one of the better offensive lines. Basically, with a big exclamation mark, the best tackle tandem in the league on the Tennessee Titans, so they can protect Mariota, they can run the ball, they can throw the ball. It's a very versatile offense. It's called the exotic smash mouth for a reason, and I expect this offense to be one of the more impressive in the league this season. And then you go to their very under-the-radar defense. They needed to beef up the secondary. That's exactly what they did in the offseason. They signed Logan Ryan. They drafted Adoree Jackson. These are two guys that will instantly help, especially in the playmaking facet. Logan Ryan's been known to intercept a few passes or two. He had a very good season for the Patriots last year, along with the best scoring defense in the league in New England. Adoree Jackson is a guy that is a straight-up playmaker. He can help you as a corner. He can also help you in the return game, and he makes plays. Arakpo and Casey can get after the quarterback. This could be a really sneaky good defense in this 2017 season if they can get after the quarterback, if they can play decent run defense, and if their corners and their secondary really shape up the way that they potentially could on paper. This is a team that could easily win their division and could easily even move past the first wild card round in the playoffs. I really like what I see from the Titans. I think they've built a very solid foundation and a good team. They've surrounded their young quarterback with a lot of help, and now their defense is forming into something as well. So the Titans are another team that is a dark horse in 2017. The next team is the Denver Broncos. And why the Denver Broncos? Well, we kind of expected the Broncos, and I called it. The Broncos would not make the playoffs this past season, and that's exactly what happened. They had a down year after winning the Super Bowl, but they regrouped this offseason, and hey man, I'm a Patriots fan. I hate the Broncos, but I gotta give you my opinion on it, and I think the Broncos are going to be a good team this season. Trevor Siemian is actually not that bad. I mean, he played pretty decent last year. He had a few bright spot games. I always remember the game against Cincinnati Bengals where he was a bright spot. And even if he doesn't win the job, they potentially go over to Paxton Lynch, which I think is unlikely. They would only do that if they think Lynch is even better than Siemian, who I just said isn't that bad. So that means they would have at least a mediocre quarterback starting. They have a great wide receiver duo in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. Still two of the best receivers in the league. Very hard to match up on them. They shored up the backup position behind their starting running back, C.J. Anderson, who, by the way, they missed a ton. Once C.J. Anderson left and he was out with an injury, this team totally lost their identity. They couldn't run the football with anybody but C.J. Anderson. They couldn't do anything on the ground. They couldn't pass the ball to the running backs. It was just a complete nightmare scenario. I expect C.J. Anderson to be back and be healthy and be strong. Then they shored up that backup, like I said, with Jamal Charles, who provides some explosion occasionally to this offense. They sort of fixed their offensive line as well with signing Ronald Leary from the Dallas Cowboys, which a lot of people looked at as the best offensive line. I think Leary was kind of that underrated guy because he was more of the veteran type, but he can play guard. He can also play tackle as well. And they drafted Garrett Bowles very high in the 2017 draft, who can also come in at least as a backup and provide some depth to the position, maybe even as a starter. And do we even have to get to the defense? The defense is still a force, no doubt about it. Von Miller is arguably the best defensive player in the league. Great secondary with Aqib Talib and also Chris Harris. They got bigger on the line in the interior, which was their big weakness at stopping the run, with Pecco, bringing him in from the Bengals. And also, they're one of the only teams who can actually play the Patriots tight, which I have to give them the respect for that. They also have a great home field advantage, which I think they use to their best So I think the Denver Broncos are a team that you could see being in the playoffs, and I wouldn't really be very surprised. They're a dark horse this year as a team not a lot of people are talking about, but they could surprise and be one of the elite teams in the NFL once again in 2017. Move on to the Houston Texans, and the Texans, similarly to the Broncos, are led by an aggressive and a fierce defense and have two of the best defensive players in the league. Jadeveon Clowney really broke out last year and had a massive year. The guy is a freaking animal. He runs people over, and when he doesn't run them over, he runs past them. He's great against the run. He's a great pass rusher, and yeah, I kind of forgot to mention J.J. Watt, who didn't even play last year. So they have the best defense in the league last year in terms of yardage given up, and they didn't even have J.J. Watt. So that means they have two players that are basically defensive player of the year quality, and that's not even including a player like Whitney Mercilus, who's also one of the best pass rushers in the league. So they have three of the best pass rushers in the league. That alone is just almost impossible to stop. Yes, they lost A.J. Bouye back in the secondary, but I think they'll be able to make up for that because they still have Brian Cushing, they still have McKinney at linebacker, and they still have Jonathan Joseph at cornerback. So this is a defense that could potentially shape up to be the best in the league once again and have two absolute forces on the defensive side of the ball coming from different directions, which is going to be impossible for people to stop. It was already hard for people to stop Mercilus and Clowney. Now they have Mercilus, Clowney, and Watt. So it's going to be interesting, the Houston Texans defense. And then offensively, they can't really get worse because Brock Osweiler is gone. Savage will start. But if Watson comes in at some point, that's when you could see the full potential of this offense. I actually don't mind Tom Savage. I just don't really think he's a great starting quarterback in the league. But at least he's better than Brock Osweiler. At least he can get something done. But I really like Watson. If he gets a start at any point in the league, he is a guy that can also run the football, which will just obviously, we've seen it in the past. Even players like Tyrod Taylor, we've seen it with Michael Vick, we've seen it with RG3, Cam Newton, whatever it is. Whenever you have a running quarterback that improves your run game, which I think that would help Lamar Miller if Watson does play, but if he doesn't, Savage plays, and that could even improve the passing game with DeAndre Hopkins, who should have a bounce-back seasons. Plus, they're getting Braxton Miller back from the IR, who actually had some bright spots last year. Will Fuller, who had a ton of bright spots early in the year and kind of fell off, and if he gains his confidence back, he could finally break out. And CJ Fedorowicz is also there, who can provide some secondary support for their quarterback. So this is a team with a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Their offensive line isn't the greatest, but if Lamar Miller and DeAndre Hopkins get back to great form, then this could be also a pretty good offense with just a mediocre to lackluster starting quarterback. But their defense, a team with the defense this good can always be a force come January. So as long as they make it there, the Texans can be a force. And then the last team for the dark horse teams, the top 5, ends with the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, I know. They sucked last year, okay? They sucked. The Cardinals sucked. I get it. They sucked, okay? But everybody picked them to go to the Super Bowl last year, and there must have been a reason why. There was a reason why, and that was because they were one of the best well-rounded teams in the league. They had an impressive defense. What they did in 2015 was impressive, and also they had a pretty good offense, if I can remember correctly. So maybe they weren't entirely wrong, and when looking at this team, maybe the Cardinals just had kind of a bad year, maybe a down year. Because when I look at this defense, specifically, the Cardinals' defense is nuts. You look at it on paper, Chandler Jones and Marcus Golden are 10-sack guys. Deion Buchanan is a great cover linebacker. They brought Carlos Dansby back, who's a good leader and still a solid player. Hassan Reddick, who they drafted, is a freak. Patrick Peterson is arguably the best corner in the league. Tyrann Mathieu just called himself the best defensive player in the league, which I think is a little bit far. But if he stays healthy, oh man, he's pretty tough too. Antoine Bethea is going to replace Tony Jefferson. Budda Baker would have been a first-round safety any other year, and this defense, you put all those pieces together with a couple pass rushers, good linebackers inside, an okay defensive line that can stop the run, and corners and safeties. I mean, this is a scary defense. And then as long as the offense kind of regains a decent form, which it wasn't terrible last year, David Johnson was probably the best running back game for game last year, especially on your fantasy team, and he's arguably the best running back in the league, especially at catching the football, also running the football. Larry Fitzgerald is Larry Fitzgerald. He's still there. David Johnson's so good, he's capable of winning the MVP. John Brown is healthy finally, and he's expected to have that jump this year, which a lot of people are looking at him to, you know, maybe be a late round flyer in their fantasy teams as well. But don't tell me you don't see the potential here. It all comes down to Carson Palmer. If Carson Palmer can capture a bit of youth, a hint of it, then this team could easily be a contender in the NFC, a conference that I look at and I think it's wide open because there's not many teams that are as well-rounded as the Cardinals on paper. And if Carson Palmer can put it together and have a decent year, this can be a dark horse team in the Arizona Cardinals. So those are the 5 biggest dark horse teams going into the 2017 NFL season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, show some support for the Bottom Line View. Let us know who the biggest dark horse team is going into the 2017 season. Did you like the list? Did you dislike the list? Was your team on the list? And also, what team did we miss? Let us know. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. The next video coming up in the top 5 series will be the final video, the top 5 NFL teams that could beat New England in 2017. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View, and peace out.